Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the bill.
To the bill.
Colleagues, I rise today in strong support of the Student Success Act. I believe I share the distinction on the floor with the representative from Western Washington County of having worked in and around public schools for the longest amount of time. I spent a decade as a teacher at Milwaukee High School and then went on to represent educators for the following 25 years. I have a front row seat to the ups and downs of Oregon's public school system, which I believe is important context as to where we find ourselves today. For me, it began way before many of you were even born, back in 1967, when in the Portland Public Schools we had no money for activities and athletics, and we went door to door, literally with a bucket, trying to get money for activities and athletics. I began teaching in 1974, and we were all laid off in North Clackamas the first day of school because the district had a year-to-year operating levy. They had no tax base and were dependent upon having the year-to-year operating levy pass. It had failed 3 times, and if it failed the 4th time, we would have closed down schools. We had to begin doing final grades on September 15th before I even knew the names of all my 160 students. Many districts had tax bases, but many of those tax bases had been brought into existence in the 1920s and had been raised at a very, very low rate. Some had to close, which in the 70s and 80s, which produced the safety net for Oregon's school closures. Some districts voted in large tax bases. One of them that I had worked on was in the Dalles. And so they went through and they had gone to a very, very small tax base to a larger one, and we went and got it, and we restored, and we were able to add programs. Then ballot measure 5 was passed, and they were considered a rich district and were lowered to the previous levy. I had to hold straws for 2 people that were 25-year teachers in the Dalles that had the same seniority and had the same certification, and they were pulling straws because one of them was going to get laid off, and the one that got their short straw got laid off. In the 1980s, we were faced with school closures, layoffs, and no hiring of staff. When we got in 1990, when we passed ballot measure 5, we had actually defeated it 4 times before it finally passed. We have had an up and down fiscal picture for almost 40 years, because it was based on personal income tax. In 2003, the Hillsborough schools, along with others, closed and shut down days. Hillsborough happened to close on May 23rd, and everybody went home. They just shut the place down, and that was one of the worst days of my professional career. I've had to see programs eliminated. I've held teachers that were being laid off of their jobs. I've lived through the tears of teachers who could not serve and protect their students due to the large class sizes, less counselors, and fewer services. This history is how our public schools find themselves in the circumstances they do today, and why the Student Success Act is so critically needed. Decades of disinvestment and cost-cutting have driven down our graduation rates, eliminated school days, and ended beloved programs that kept students engaged and successful. I have seen the history of our schools be written in front of me for the last 40 years, and I don't think the past has to be the prologue. I believe that we have opportunities today to make a course correction for our students. The Student Success Act lays out the kind of bright future that we want. Today is historic, colleagues. I am proud to be standing among you to vote in support of the Student Success Act, and I strongly urge your aye vote. Thank you very much.